Hey y'all, this is Brown at IF Brown. So I wanted to just take a little moment to talk about, I guess you could say, my 9/11 experience, because I was in 10th grade when, the Twin Towers went down, and I was in Richardson, Texas, and I was going to Berkner High School, and I was living with my dad and stepmom at the time, and I remember though that I think, dad was either, still asleep or he was getting ready or something. And, my stepmom, she was putting her makeup on, and I was in the, kitchen or dining room, getting some breakfast. And my stepmom had the radio on, and she's telling me that, Brown, something, horrible happened or something along those lines. And, she was saying that a plane crashed into one of the towers at the World Trade Center. And so, naturally, I was kind of like, oh man, that's bad. I mean, I've never been to New York or anything like that, but I remember that was kind of like a landmark, and she and I were both thinking that, maybe the pilot, had a heart attack or something, and, died at the controls, and, the plane, hit the building. And I mean, as bad as it was, I mean, it was an accident or something. But then another plane came and hit the other tower. And that's when, I mean, we heard this on the radio, I remember, because, right about when, she and I were, both agreeing that, the first tower going down was because, the pilot must have had a heart attack or something. Right about then, the person on the radio was, saying, that, another plane has hit the second tower. And so I remember she and I were just looking at each other like, what the hell's going on? I mean, we didn't say that, but I mean, the feeling was there, and then I remember going to school, I mean, that day, and, in all the classrooms that I could see, including the one I was in, first period, I mean, the teachers had the TVs on, to, I guess, try and stay on top of things and figure out what was going on here. And, I remember the teachers were doing a pretty good job of kind of, keeping things together as far as, not breaking down and freaking out, even though they must have been terrified. But they kept a, good game face on. But I remember, the students, myself included, I mean, we were all feeling different things. Like, I remember, we were all just confused and wondering, I mean, are we under attack, and who's attacking us, and all this stuff. And I remember, people were saying, this is what happens when you vote for Bush, or something like that. I remember that too. But, and then I remember, it was just, a really, intense day, and it's like all these reports are coming in, and I didn't see. Here's the thing, I didn't know anyone, as far as I know, that died in New York or anything like that. But at the same time, when the news was talking about people like jumping from the buildings, because I mean, it was either, burned to death or jump out of the building or something like that. I mean, and that really got to me, and it probably got to, I'm sure it got to a lot of other people too, but it just, these were real people, dying. And I know that, I mean, I'm not trying to like, say one thing or another when it comes to politics or anything like that. It's just that, that was a day that it was kind of the equivalent of where were you when Kennedy was shot. And, that was the equivalent of that, because, I mean, obviously I was born, after, Kennedy was shot, but at the same time, I remember where I was on 9/11, and, that's something that, you don't forget. And one of the things that is unfortunate, I've noticed, is that a lot of people seem to want to forget, especially like a lot of, the mainstream media. Like, today is just another day. And I'll admit, it kind of feels like just another day. But at the same time, it's like, I think it would only be fair just to maybe, take a moment just to, think about the people who died that day. And also, the aftermath is still being felt today because, when the towers came down, all this, dust and, all these particles and everything, came out, and like the firefighters and, people on the ground, they got exposed to all this, dangerous stuff that was in the dust, all the particles and everything. And it wasn't until, say, like years later that they find out that they have all these problems like, cancer or, what have you. And, it's still, the impact is still being felt to this day, even if not a lot of people are talking about it. But I remember, though, that, last night, though, I had gone to see my folks, and they were watching 60 Minutes, and they were interviewing some firefighters, and there were a couple of people that they became firefighters because their parents were firefighters, and a couple of their parents who were firefighters had actually died on 9/11. So it's like they were trying to fill their parents' shoes and carry on the tradition and what have you. And I mean, there were some very heartbreaking stories. I mean, there were some very touching ones too. But I remember this one lady, she was saying something to the effect of, she hopes that people remember that day, and it doesn't just become something that is on one page in a history book, and then you turn the page and that's it. It's just like, I just think it's something that people should remember a bit more. And it's just, I mean, I don't know anyone who died that day, but at the same time, I know that the people who did die, they were real people. They had families and loved ones and all that. And the fact that it happened here in America, I mean, that was something that changed a lot of things, because I think, the last time, I mean, one of the times people think about when, America is under attack was, Pearl Harbor, and that was back in World War II. And that's what, got America into the war and all that. But then, of course, you got 9/11, then you have the war in Iraq. And, I mean, there's been so much that's come out about, all that's, long after it, and so, I'm not trying to, say one thing or another as far as, politics or anything. It's just that, unfortunately, it seems like stuff like this, I mean, there's always a loss of life, and the impact is still being felt to this day. So I just wanted to share that and get that out there. But if anyone's got any 9/11 stories, I mean, to share, I'd love to hear them, because I'm always on this day, I'm always learning from other people, like how they processed things, and how, amongst other things, some people suffered from racial profiling and what have you. Like if you were a Muslim, there was a big focus on you, and stuff like that, which I guess maybe to an extent would be understandable, but at the same time, some people were berated and bullied, because they're a Muslim, and people just assumed that all Muslims, were terrorists and what have you, and that just wasn't the case. But unfortunately, that is something that, was kind of a side effect of 9/11, and, it's like you learn about all these things that happened that day, and that you didn't see or didn't know about until sometime later. But then again, it's like you have your own experience, and I remember this one guy I was talking to about it. You know, he said that he didn't really feel anything because he just remembered he was stoned the whole day. And I mean, I'm like, really, dude? I mean, I don't know. But anyway, yeah, just like I said, I wanted to get that out there. Share some of my thoughts on 9/11, and if anyone's got any stories, to tell about it, I'd love to hear them. So, thanks for taking the time. Y'all have a good day. Bye.